Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is FBC NFL Sunday. We are back for the 2023 season. Well, technically, we were back on Thursday, but obviously, this is the first official Sunday of the NFL season. And, well, it's here. It's here. It's finally here. We've been waiting for a while. There's, a lot of great storylines coming into this season. Obviously, we already have a few cooking just after the first game. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But a lot of rookie quarterbacks, a lot of history being made with the number of African American quarterbacks starting this season. And of course, we're talking about the first season in the 21st century without Tom Brady playing. So there's a lot of things to digest and get excited about this year. I think there's going to be a very competitive AFC. I think the NFC is there's not as much certainty, but there's plenty of intrigue because we saw right off the bat the Lions. We both thought Thursday night's kickoff was going to be a high scoring affair. It wasn't that at all, actually. If anything, it was a defensive affair with the Lions. I don't know if surprising the Chiefs is the word, because I think that downplays what the Lions have done and how they've grown and kind of how they responded and played a pretty solid game. But the Chiefs really missed Travis Kelce. Anyone out there saying this was a win for Chris Jones, I think didn't watch the game, because I actually thought the defense was pretty good. There were certainly moments where you're looking like, wow, that there's some massive holes that are going to need to be cleaned up moving forward. But considering how good that Lions offense was a year ago, to hold them to just 21 points, well, technically 14 because they scored a defensive touchdown, is pretty good considering you're missing Chris Jones. So I think the biggest issue we saw was the absence of Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I guess starting off with Jones, it's just kind of a weird situation that he was actually in the building for the game. I guess where
Wearing
he
a
was in the building,
Seahawks hat too.
yeah,
I
it
don't think
just
that means anything, by the way. Again, people point it's just a fashion choice, but just an odd choice.
right, yeah, and someone was joking. It looked like he was being held hostage by the Sopranos with his agent sitting next to him like that. So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting. We've seen other players either get deals or just decide to wait to next off season. So, I don't really remember anyone else besides Le'Veon Bell in recent history missing any games, and we saw that worked out. Obviously, different player, different position, but I'm just shocked he ended up actually missing some games. And yeah, I think with Kelsey, it's just you kind of know there's going to be moments where you can kind of just ad lib out there, just based on how he's able to use his leverage and read the defense. So I think that was kind of the biggest thing, is you saw a lot of receivers outside of the drops just struggle to get open, running to spots, and the Lions did a really good job of just kind of boxing them in and forcing a lot of low percentage throws, especially late in the game when the game was on the line. So yeah, I think the Lions' play style it's really fascinating. They can obviously be physical, but I think they're really creative, especially on offense. When you look at what Jared Goff's able to do with protecting the football and kind of that play action game and just kind of testing the eyes and feet of the defense. So I'm really interested to see who kind of steps up in this receiver room outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can tell the Jameson Williams absence was really felt Thursday night. So we'll see who kind of steps up. But this is a really versatile team, and I think they're going to be able to kind of impose their will when they want to, but also as we saw last year, score high and make these games a lot of shootouts.
Yeah, and look, this was an offense that was, obviously aggressive early on, and not something that should surprise us, because that's kind of the Lions' MO of late. And to see them, go for it early on, I think that kind of set the tone. It didn't win the game, obviously, because a lot of things happened after that. And really, I know the discourse around the Chiefs is look, welcome to the world of being the Patriots. I mean, this is what's going to happen. I mean, it's you're going to have outrageous reactions in both directions. There's going to be, first of all, I still push back that they are a quote unquote dynasty. So the idea that there's commentary coming out saying is the dynasty over? It's like, well, first of all, we'll push aside the dynasty talk for a moment, but it's week 1. They lost by 1 point, okay? In a game that I thought Mahomes was pretty good, not great, and I think the offense was disjointed. What was, I think, the best word I could come up with to describe it, because they just kind of looked out of sorts. The puzzling, again, this is where it's kind of weird, because it's like I don't feel like, at least in the national media, there's getting that 4th and 25, well, first 4th and 20 and then 4th and 25 decision. I don't, that was very puzzling to me.
Yeah.
Certainly from Andy Reid, who he had a reputation in the past of having some late game clock management blunders and stuff like that, especially early on in his career with Philadelphia. That was always kind of his knock, well, Andy Reid, he struggles in that area. But this was puzzling, because I felt like there was more than enough time for the Chiefs to punt the ball away, play defense. I believe they had all 3 timeouts at that point. Or no, did they only have 2?
It might have been 2, I think, but I think they would have maybe had the 2-minute warning as well.
Well, they should have. The punt should have been completed and received by the Lions, I believe, before the 2-minute warning. Look, it would have been close, and they would have had to make a play. But I felt like, I don't know. It was puzzling. It was a puzzling decision to me. Some of the short yardage plays, the trickery, again.
Yeah.
Like just play football sometimes. And it's like sometimes you overthink things. And like I said, I mean, obviously there was a lot of bad drops. I mean, I'm not going to put the quote unquote interception on Mahomes, obviously, because I think that was clearly a very accurate, direct pass that went off his hands. But some of the other drops, I kind of give a 50-50 split, because in one sense, like the pass to Tony, that again, bobbled in his hands, he should have caught, but at the same time, it was also thrown behind him. So I can't put 100% blame on one or the other. Like I said, it was just a kind of a disjointed effort from the Chiefs offense. I thought the defense looked fast at times. I thought they tackled pretty well. There's, like I said, a few moments where, they looked pretty porous up the middle, but I thought they played pretty well against a pretty talented Lions team. But at the end of the day, the Lions are 1-0 and the Chiefs are 0-1. So moving forward, though, I will point out that this would be something I would be concerned about, and it's the play of the tackles, and especially Donovan Smith, because I do believe that some Chiefs fans have, over the offseason, convinced themselves that was going to be a good move. What you saw from him is what you're going to get the rest of the season. You're lucky there weren't more penalty calls on him. That's going to happen. He did get one already, a holding call, a very egregious holding call too, because he was beat. And there was a couple other plays that were highlighted that forced Mahomes to throw the ball early, where he was just beat off the line. And it just, again, this is what we saw last year with Tampa. And, again, Bucs fans will sit there and say, we told you, this is what Donovan Smith is. And then on the flip side, literally, I don't know if the this was my favorite video that came out of this this whole game, was they were showing that clip of Taylor Swift when she was dancing and she was just kind of rocking back and forth, and it was like, this is what what's his face was doing every snap. And I mean, it was pretty accurate. And the fact that, like, a lot, I mean, I said it on Twitter, and then a lot of other people also were like chiming in, like, wait a minute, is it me, or is he committing a false start every single snap? And it was a terrible tell too, because after a while you just knew, all right, well, if he was up against the line, it's going to be a run. If he's back illegally, it's going to be a pass, and he's going to move early. So I think that's something that moving forward, because this was something he did in Jacksonville too. I mean, this
Right.
isn't, I don't know if it was as egregious, because I can't believe that people wouldn't have noticed a game like this. But I feel like it's going to be a point of emphasis moving forward too. So you might start seeing a more abundance of false start penalties on the Chiefs early on, especially over the next few weeks if they can't figure it out, and that's going to be frustrating, especially having to rebound and going up against a team like Jacksonville next week.
Yeah, and it's funny how the false start came right at the end of the game. It probably wouldn't have
Yeah,
mattered. The Lions probably still maybe win that game either way with that penalty not happening. But yeah, the timing of that was pretty funny, and you just like you said, you saw that in Jacksonville. So it's interesting to kind of see the lengths that he's gone to really for a long time to kind of get any advantage. So, but like you said, I think the biggest thing is kind of giving away the tell if it's going to be a pass or a run play. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'd be worried about for the Chiefs with him going forward. So kind of just tweaking that a little bit is probably the biggest thing that I'd look forward to.
yeah, again, I mean, it's week one. Do the games matter? Absolutely, and especially now with there only being one bye week, this could be the difference between them getting the first or second seed. I mean, I'm not
Right.
saying it doesn't matter, but it also, at the end of the day, it is week one. You have a very long time to figure this out and get this sorted. And look, at the end of the day, I don't think any of the other teams right now in the AFC West, as from what I've seen so far, are any much of a threat. You know, it's the Chiefs division, and like I said, it's not going to be as easy. Not that it was ever easy before, but I think there's going to be a few more hurdles to overcome this season. But that's something you can kind of expect, and we've talked about this before. I mean, it's just the evolution of a great team. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you may start out and looking like winning is as easy as waking up and stepping on the football field, but eventually it gets a little bit harder. And obviously, great teams can keep winning. It just doesn't seem as easy, and sometimes you're going to have situations like this where you lose to a pretty good NFC team. So. Anyways, so I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if I'm about ready to anoint the Lions my NFC favorite quite yet. I foolishly, no, not foolishly. I don't want to give up this early, but I did pick the Bears to win this division, the NFC North. So we're going to see how that ultimately plays out. But uh, we have, like I said, a lot of intrigue coming into the season. I think you have the AFC is just. I mean, they have so many really good quarterbacks. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes at the top, but you have Joe Burrow, who just signed his big contract, Josh Allen, you have Aaron Rodgers now. You have some wild cards and some of the other younger guys. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is everyone's pegging him to make a big step up. There's intrigue around guys like Mac Jones, who, year three, you have a better opportunity with a more traditional offensive coordinator, and I do believe a better group of offensive weapons around him. So the AFC could be potentially just a powerhouse of quarterback play. I mean, you can only get 7 teams that go into the playoffs. So I mean, there's going to be an odd man out. I mean, you have Deshaun Watson, whether you think he's a elite quarterback or not. I mean, that's up for discussion. A lot of people love Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, thinking that's going to be a one hell of a combination this year. So I guess I'll ask you this: outside of the big teams in the AFC, which ones are most intriguing to you? Are you on that George Pickens and Kenny Pickett bandwagon, or are you looking at, look, the Ravens, I think, have quietly revamped their offense to be a potentially, best in the league type of unit. So is it the AFC North? Is it the AFC East? Is it the AFC West? Maybe. Who knows? Justin Herbert, Russell
Yeah,
Wilson.
I think it's definitely the AFC North to me, just because I think Cincinnati. I mean, they're still obviously probably second best team or top two team in the AFC for me, but Pittsburgh, it's just kind of interesting to see the offensive improvements given what offensive coordinator Matt Canada's kind of been like in the past. I mean, there was even some reports, and maybe it was just because he was a rookie last year, but Pickett really didn't have a lot of freedom to change much at the line of scrimmage last year. So I just think seeing them kind of open up their offense a little bit. There's definitely, I think, a lot more depth than what's given credit for in Pittsburgh as well. You talked about Pickens and everybody knows Deontay Johnson, but I think Jalen Warren is a running back that a lot of people are going to get to know this year. Najee Harris is still their top guy, but Warren's kind of that change of pace back that can kind of do it all in between the tackles and really kind of surprises with his long speed as well. So I think Pittsburgh's the offense that I'm most interested to see because we know this defense can be one of the best in the league. And with Mike Tomlin, I mean, he's never had a losing season. So they're always in the thick of it. So if they can kind of just, I think, have a little bit more consistency, finishing games and kind of being able to compete in some of these shootouts in the AFC, I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch.
Yeah, and I can't disagree. And to Kyle's comment on our comment board, and if you want to get involved, you can do it on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. I did not mention Lamar Jackson, but I'm going to get to him because again, I look at, yes, I agree. I think the AFC North is you could potentially easily see three teams make the postseason out of that division. I like the AFC. I happen to be very optimistic about the Patriots offense. I think their defense is still going to be really good. And if their offense can play close to a top 10 level type of offense, I think they can make some noise and certainly maybe surprise some people. But the reality of it is I think this is the AFC North. The Bengals going for their third straight division title. I think again, getting back to the Ravens, and I will mention Lamar Jackson here, I think they've been quietly just going about business ever since that deal got done. I mean, that was kind of the big distraction for the last couple of years. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's health, and really the health of the players around him as well. I mean, they didn't really, have that many elite players to the point where, like, well, if Lamar Jackson is banged up a little bit, you can't take that workload off of him. And I think they have that now. And I think they've added some nice pieces to their defense. So all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, everyone's obviously talking about the Chiefs, and rightfully so. I mean, people are talking about Jacksonville. They're talking about Kenny Pickett and the Steelers, and obviously, well, not so much the Buffalo Bills. I feel like they're another team that's somehow is flying under the radar, but teams are talking about the Bengals and Joe Cool and all that. And I'm sitting here saying there's only been two unanimous MVPs in this league, one of which unfortunately is retired and not playing anymore. The other is Lamar Jackson. And I'm not saying that like he's going to go out and have the exact same season he had in 2019, which was, again, I mean, just an incredible season, but why can't he come close to that? You add Odell Beckham Jr. to the mix. You have your contract in place. That distraction is over. You're not thinking about that. You're not asked about that every single week. You're not worried. You know what I mean? Whether or not he sat out to protect himself last year, who knows if he had the contract? Maybe. But no, Kyle, it was actually Tom Brady, and it wasn't 2007. It wasn't 2007, which is crazy to think that he did not get the unanimous MVP that year. But one person, yeah, you're going back in the time capsule a little bit. I love me some Otto Graham, but don't. We're not going to talk about that. But so, anyways, to me, I'm looking at the Ravens, and I'm saying this seems like a slam dunk AFC pick. And certainly a rebound season, if you want to call it, for Lamar Jackson, who I did pick to win the MVP this year. I do think the Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl and win it. And yeah, so that's the intrigue. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I think it's going to have it's going to make the Jets fun, certainly for Jets fans. Ultimately, I just don't think they're going to stack up against these other elite teams. Like if they play Kansas City in the playoffs, I'm taking Kansas City 10 times out of 10. If they play the Ravens, I'm taking the Ravens probably 9 times out of 10. So, and these are the teams that they're going to have to beat moving forward. Now, I'm basing this off, well, seeing absolutely nothing from them this season because they haven't played a game. But it's also the guy under center. The guy has, and Kyle can speak to this. I mean, it's not all the excuses as to why he didn't win another Super Bowl. I mean, the Green Bay Packers went to 5 NFC Championship games. They're 1-4, so they had opportunities to win other games. Aaron Rodgers is going to get over the hurdle, and I just don't know if they're going to do it year one, especially against some of these other teams like the Chiefs, like the Ravens, like the Bills, and like the Bengals. To be quite honest.
Yeah, and I think back to the Ravens real quick. I think this is really the first time I think you can feel good about their wide receiver room around Lamar Jackson as well. We'll see what Odell Beckham's going to look like, but I'm really excited about rookie Zay Flowers. I think this is probably one of the top guys that I would peg as having a chance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, just because they've really never had a guy with this kind of athleticism around Lamar Jackson. So. Really excited to kind of see what those receivers look like there, and just how much Lamar's going to throw the ball. I know there's some people projecting him to easily beat his career high in pass attempts this season. So if we see that, I'm kind of buying into what Lamar's going to be with this new offensive coordinator. But yeah, with the Jets, I wonder what the defense is going to be. I think they'll still be fine. I just don't know if they're going to do exactly what they did last season in the turnover category and their pass rush category. So I think if you kind of fall back to earth a little bit in that department, it's going to be like you mentioned, going up against the Kansas Cities and the Baltimores and Cincinnati's, the Buffaloes. I think that's going to put a lot more pressure on Aaron Rodgers than maybe any playoff run he had in Green Bay just right off the bat.
Yeah, and then look, if the Jets were playing in the NFC, I'd probably give them 100% chance of making the playoffs and having a strong run because, well, it's just right now on paper. I mean, again, we're basing this off seeing literally one game of the NFL season. And if we based everything on one game, then, well, the NFC reigns. The Chiefs suck. Patrick Mahomes leads the league in interceptions and all that nonsense. But we don't. So we're just kind of, making assumptions and kind of going based on some of last year, some of the presumed improvements or non-improvements that have been made. And look, the NFC just doesn't look as thick. You got a couple, the Eagles, I think are Eagles and 49ers. Even the 49ers, though, big question mark at quarterback, in my opinion. The NFC South, you can forget about them. They're not going to do anything. They're going to be an easy out for that wild card team that draws them as the fourth seed. The NFC West, again, like I said, San Francisco, but Seattle, I think, is going to be pretty good. But I think there's 4 or 5 teams better in the AFC than Seattle, including the Jets. So, again, to me, I think, yeah, it's going to be a lot more difficult in the AFC. And, especially year one, I think you're going to have some struggles that need to be overcome. And maybe you lose a game that maybe next year you won't lose, but that can make all the difference in this conference. So, like you said, it's part of it. There's just so much intrigue going into this season. And, like I said, I'm excited to get it kicked off here in just a couple hours, but I think it's ready for pick time because we're we got about 20 minutes or so before we're off here, and then at 11:30 we have our man Kyle coming up with our fantasy football show. So stay tuned, take a break, go get a snack, and then come back and watch some more full press coverage, NFL coverage. So, but we are going to jump right into our picks, and let's start with Carolina at Atlanta. Again, the NFC South. There's really not. I don't think Tampa's going to be good. I think you're going to get some flashes in the pan from Baker Mayfield. I think the Saints could be okay, but it's Derek Carr, and I mean that's pretty much, you're going to have moments where you're going to look like maybe they're the team to beat, and then they're going to finish 10-7 or 9-8 or something like that. So the reality of it is the Carolina Panthers might have the highest ceiling in this division because, well, there's that intrigue with Bryce Young. What is he going to be? Like, is he going to turn into this elite quarterback? Are some of these other players going to step up and make plays? And like, they're the only ones that really you can really sit there and say they have their quarterback of the future.
Right.
I mean, maybe Atlanta, but I feel a little bit more confident in Carolina, and that's why I'm going to pick them week 1. So, long story short, I have Carolina winning. I'm eager to see Bryce Young, and I think he can have a pretty solid rookie season, especially competing against what I think is some less than stellar competition, especially early on against Atlanta.
I ultimately went with the Falcons. I really don't have a good lean or reason. I think maybe the only thing is just the foundation and the coaching staff. Obviously, has been there a little bit longer in Atlanta, so that was kind of my biggest lean. But something's got to give for these two teams. Frank Reich, obviously new team, but 0-4-1 as a head coach in Week 1 all time, and then the Falcons have lost 5 straight Week 1 games. Maybe we'll get a tie, but something's got to give and. I'm going to go with Atlanta.
All right, next we have Baltimore Texans. I mean, I think it's very clear. Look, I just talked up Baltimore for the last 10 minutes. If I pick the Texans, I mean, I should turn in my uh, football commentary card because that would just be foolish. So I'm very clearly taking the Ravens in this. But again, there's intrigue with C.J. Stroud. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's he going to do? How is he going to, adjust to the NFL game? And they have a new coaching staff in place. D'Amico Ryans, how is he going to bring this team out of what's been a never-ending just doldrum of football? I mean, they had a little bit of a peak, and then it all came crashing down when they wore varsity Letterman jackets, and nothing has been the same since. So, I'm very clearly going to take the Ravens in this one. I think they're going to handle pretty well. But I think that the biggest, when watching this game, especially if you're a Houston Texans fan, you want to look for the little things. It's not necessarily about getting that win because I just don't think the Texans are going to be good. I don't think they're going to stack up wins this year. I think it's going to be a growing process. But you want to see how C.J. Stroud looks in the NFL game and if he can make some nice plays against, again, a very good team to start his career. So give me Baltimore, but I am intrigued by watching the Texans this weekend.
Yeah, I'm C.J. Stroud's one of my favorite quarterbacks entering the league, at least over the course of the last few years. So really, really excited to see what he's able to do. I think some tough things for Houston right off the bat. You have some veteran pieces that they brought in with D'Amico Ryans out in this game. Jimmy Ward, who obviously has been a defensive back in Ryan's system before, is one of them. So that's kind of a tough pill to swallow for Houston out of the gate with some of those leaders not in action. But yeah, I don't know if this will be really close, but I do think this is at least a defense on paper that C.J. Stroud, or I should say a secondary on paper that C.J. Stroud could find some great learning moments from. So I think Ravens win, but really excited to see what Stroud does.
All right. So next we got the Colts hosting the Jaguars, and again, we're already talking about Jaguars Chiefs a week from now, which I think is going to be a very good matchup. I think Jacksonville's going into that game 1-0 because I'm intrigued by Anthony Richardson. I want to see him out there on the football field. I want to see how he looks. I mean, the athleticism's there, but is that going to turn into a NFL ability to pass the ball efficiently? Because you can have all the athleticism in the world, but if you can't throw the ball at an NFL level, you're not going to make it in this league. So the Colts have had some pretty good luck with first round quarterbacks. Obviously, when you pick first overall, and your options are Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck, you really don't have a choice, or you can't really screw it up. I mean, I know we can go back and talk about some of the questions about Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf And then even there was some Andrew Luck and RG3 talk at the time, but it was very clearly those two guys. So you can't really mess it up. This time, I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson is going to be a bust. Not at all. I'm saying he's not as sure a thing as Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck were coming into the league. So it'll be fascinating to see how he adjusts and how that offense evolves, because one, you're going to have to do it without Jonathan Taylor. One, because of injury. Two, because he's probably not going to suit up for them again. Unless there's what was it, the running back out in Cam Akers out with the Rams, who had that like weird stint where it's like, wow, this guy's never going to even step foot in the LA Rams facility again. And then like 2 weeks later, he was scoring like 2 touchdowns for him. So maybe this relationship can be repaired. I don't know if it can be. Either way, it's going to be kind of a difficult season for Indianapolis, and pulling Jacksonville on week 1, that's a pretty rough start. So give me Jacksonville in this one, and I think immediately. And this is the crazy thing, though. They didn't beat Indianapolis, or the last time they met, Indy won this game. But I like Jacksonville. Calvin Ridley. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be fascinating. I think I'm going to put him on sort of a tribute. I'm going to put him on a lot of my daily fantasy lineups today. Just, kind of the whole gambling thing and whatnot. So, but either way, if I was a betting man, and I just can't do it here in Florida, I would take Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's I don't necessarily think Anthony Richardson's going to be a bad player, but there's always something about these bet on traits guys. We've seen just in the last handful of years how much experience at the college game matters. And I can't remember the number of games now, but less than 20 starts, I believe, at Florida. So definitely going to be growing pains, and I think the Colts know that. I got to go with Jacksonville just because it's a well-coached team, and this is a team that's really done a good job, I think, building around Trevor Lawrence. Christian Kirk's free agent contract was kind of a joke for a while in the wide receiver market, but he's really coming off a strong season. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Calvin Ridley. Just excited to see what he looks like right away. So I got Jacksonville.
Oh, and let's not forget Travis Etienne too. Stacking some touchdowns, hopefully. But no, it is. It's an intriguing team with certainly a much better coach than Urban Meyer. And again, I do hope them being a young team that they aren't looking ahead like I am to the next week to Kansas City, because that could set up to be a pretty costly mistake. So anyways, next let's do Bengals and Browns. Obviously we talked about the Bengals before. Joe Burrow is big money man. He's got big new contract. They've won the division the last 2 years in a row. The Browns are entering their second season with Deshaun Watson starting for them. Let's see what happens with his game. Is he gonna be a little bit more closer to that year where he threw 5,000 yards? However, I shall point out that season the Texans went 4-12. So I've always said I'm not that impressed with that season from Deshaun Watson, because if you're stacking up stats like that, but you're not winning games, that doesn't matter to me. So, anyways, I'm looking at this and I say, I think the Bengals, look, I think it's long past the point of questioning whether or not the Bengals are an elite team in this league, certainly in the conference. They are. They've been to a Super Bowl. Obviously, they haven't won one yet. But if you're going to ask me, are the Cleveland Browns going to be able to handle the Bengals? No. I think the Bengals are going to have their way with them. I think I really don't think Cleveland's going to have a great season this year. I'm not a big believer in Deshaun Watson, both on the field and off the field. Yeah. So, I look at this as one of many losses on Cleveland's season on their schedule this year, and potentially I think it's going to be twice to the Bengals. So give me the Bengals in week 1 and let the hype train begin.
Yeah, I guess the hype train on the Browns, whenever I see it, that's definitely one I don't understand this year. But yeah, for whatever reason, this has been a tough matchup for the Bengals when Joe Burrow's been the quarterback. 1-4 all time against Cleveland. Did get that first one in their last meeting, but I think this is kind of a different team now, different situation that he's facing. in Cleveland. Of course, Myles Garrett's still there, but I think you got a lot of young pieces, a lot of inexperience, and I think the Bengals are just ready to kind of get rolling. We saw obviously the big deal that Burrow got come in on Thursday night, and I think this team's just kind of really set up well. Around him, even though T. Higgins isn't locked up long term. I think there's just a lot of motivation around this Bengals team right now. So I think they start off with a pretty dominant win in Cleveland.
Next, we have the Buccaneers heading to Minnesota. Again, the last 3 years, the Buccaneers, it was all about Tom Brady. Now, not so much. It's probably going to be much similar to what, well, this franchise has been for the majority of its time on this earth. Like I said, I mean, they have to get through a lot of hurdles to get back to being a pretty good team. I think you're gonna have some nice moments from Baker Mayfield. Um, but I think it's going to be apparent, certainly what we saw last year, how good Brady was for this team, because they were a bad team last year on many levels. I think they had poor offensive play calling. That's why they have a new offensive coordinator. I think their head coaching was more than questionable. I think they had too many injuries, too many issues, dropping passes, and play. There were so many problems. It's almost incredible that they went 8-9 and somehow snuck into the playoffs. I don't think things are going to be as good, quote unquote, for the Bucks this year. I think maybe they win 4 games, and this is not going to be one of them. So I like Minnesota at home against the Buccaneers, who, like I said, I think it's just going to be a transitional season that you hope isn't going to last if you're Tampa Bay. But if you are Tampa Bay, then you have a lot of bad memories of seasons past, so you're kind of worried that it might last. But yeah, I don't like Tampa in this one. I like Minnesota pretty handily.
Yeah, I do as well. Kirk Cousins has really kind of, become at least a steady quarterback for the Vikings. I think that's one thing that you can at least lean on. You're not, when you're comparing him to some of these maybe other middle tier quarterbacks, you're not seeing him consistently turn the ball over or obviously make a lot of bad decisions usually in 2 minute situations. So I think there's a lot that Kirk Cousins has really done well just to continue improving, and I think that's going to show up today against this Tampa defense that I guess just not really sure what to make of this Tampa defense in some spots. I like some pieces, but in others, that's just a defense that's gotten so old so quickly. So not a lot of good defenses here in this matchup, but I do like the Vikings to win pretty handily.
Next, we have the Titans heading to New Orleans to take on Derek Carr and the Saints. I got the Titans in this one. I'm interested to see how the Ryan Tannehill, DeAndre Hopkins duo does. You add in Traylon Burks. Last year had a solid rookie season, and I think this, and obviously Derrick Henry. You hope that Tennessee isn't forced to use Derrick Henry to the capacity that they've had in the past, and you hope that this offense is a little bit more balanced. And if it is, look, they can win some games. I don't think they're going to win the division. I don't think they're necessarily any sort of big time threat in the conference, but they can certainly make the playoffs and at the very least play spoiler to some of these other AFC teams. But I do think they take care of business against the Saints because, again, we talked about the NFC South. It's just one giant question mark, and I don't think my gut doesn't tell me a lot of good things are going to be coming out of this division this year.
Yeah, I didn't really know who to go with. I went with the Saints just because I do kind of like the offense around Derek Carr a little bit more, especially kind of in the trenches. I think that's where the Saints are going to maybe be able to match Tennessee's intensity, especially with the Titans' defensive line. So I think this could potentially be one of the lowest scoring Week 1 games for sure, and I think the Saints will find a way to get it done late.
Next, we have the 49ers heading to Pittsburgh, which, again, if you're on the Steelers hype train, then you're probably looking at this and saying, wow, this is a pretty fascinating, intriguing Week 1 matchup. And look, it is. I don't know if I'm necessarily as on board with, I guess, the Steelers hype that some people have. I mean, some people are, thinking maybe they can challenge the Bengals for the division. I don't think so. I think the Ravens are going to win the division, so that doesn't, obviously I don't agree with that, but I do like the Steelers in terms of being a very competitive team, and I think early on you can get I think we're going to get a pretty intriguing matchup. Now, I still took the 49ers, but it would not surprise me if Steelers somehow pulled this off. But I do have the 49ers winning this one. Nick Bosa being in the lineup, so pretty important factor.
Yeah, I did pick the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, but I opted to go Pittsburgh here in week one. I just think you're maybe having a little bit of hesitancy surrounding what Brock Purdy's fully able to do right now. Obviously, they wouldn't put him out there if they didn't think he was ready. But I think with how Pittsburgh kind of addressed the back seven this offseason, I think they can kind of match anything the 49ers have out there on the outside at wide receiver right now. And I just think this is going to be a game that Pittsburgh's able to kind of put that pressure on Purdy and find a way to win this game. So I like the Steelers, even though the Niners are my Super Bowl pick.
All right, next, the Commanders are hosting the Cardinals. Now, I think these two teams are destined to have top 10 picks in the draft next year. So I have really no high hopes for either of them. I'll give Washington the edge because, well, I think the Cardinals are far more dysfunctional, or at least questionable, going into the season, heading into this year. So, I'm not trying to pass judgment early, but I just don't see either of these two teams doing anything but picking top 10 next year in the draft, which means, well, they're probably not going to win a lot of games. So I do think Washington wins this one. But I don't know. Josh Dobbs and Sam Howell doesn't really do it for me. Now, obviously, Kyler Murray will eventually be back with the Cardinals, but even then, never been not a big Kyler Murray fan. So I look, these two teams are going top 10 in the draft at some point, maybe even top 5, who knows, depending on how the season goes, especially for Arizona. But this week one, I'll take the Commanders.
Yeah, I'll go Commanders as well. Not really a whole lot to add. I just really interested to see, I guess, if Washington's defense can kind of bounce back. This was a unit that had a lot of high expectations last couple of years, have kind of dealt with a lot of big name injuries and haven't really been able to get off the field in key situations. So I'm interested to see how they look this year. But this could be their chance to kind of to pitch a shutout and maybe at least not give up a touchdown today to open the season. So I like Washington in this one.
Next, we have the Bears hosting the Green Bay Packers, the Jordan Love Green Bay Packers. Christian Watson, not in there. Big loss. I mean, this is not the ideal first, not first start, but first start of his reign, so to speak. Not ideal at all, and certainly on the road. I got the Bears winning this game. I think, again, I think the Bears are going to be a little bit sloppy to start the season. So my pick of them winning the division is probably going to look a little dicey early on. But I think ultimately this team's going to settle down and win some games late in the season, which I think is what's going to propel them to the division. So I had originally picked the Packers. And again, that might sound crazy because it goes against my divisional pick, but like I said, I just explained it. I think the Bears are going to have a slow start, but I think they're ultimately going to come around and win this division. So I had originally picked the Packers, but this was before Christian Watson and some of these other injuries. I don't know if the Packers have enough on offense or defense to win against pretty much any team in the league in week one, unless Jordan Love just goes crazy. But I'm hoping for it, Kyle. I'm for you. I'm hoping for the Packers to pull this off. Not really. Don't tell them. But no, seriously, I'll take the Bears. But if you see me post a graphic on Twitter or something that has the Packers, well, it's because I changed my pick. But I did that long before the game. So give me the Bears in this one.
Yeah, I went with Green Bay. I think the biggest area where I think you can maybe point to the Packers having the advantage out of the gate is probably the trenches. Offensive line, probably top 3, top 5 still in the league. if everyone's fully healthy. And Elton Jenkins, I think, has been obviously the biggest piece of that. So I just don't know if the Bears have enough in this defensive line and even the entire front seven to kind of handle the Packers running game. I think A.J. Dillon has a pretty big day. Aaron Jones might as well, but Dillon's kind of the one that I really have my eye on in this matchup. So this feels like one of the toughest games to pick this week, but ultimately I went with Green Bay. Still kind of have my concerns about Chicago and if they've really improved much this offseason.
Next, we have the Raiders heading to the Broncos, a intriguing AFC West matchup. Look, I think the Raiders are going to be a weird team. I think Jimmy Garoppolo absolutely makes them better. I think he's going to have a really good season with Devontae Adams. I mean, how can you not? I mean, it's Devontae Adams, and I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good enough quarterback, a good enough regular season quarterback. I mean, obviously he can perform in the playoffs, but we kind of all know, you're limited with him as your starter, but it doesn't mean they can't win regular season games. And I think they might end up finishing second in this division to Kansas City, just because I think they might have the steadiest quarterback play, and that includes a guy like Justin Herbert, who I think might have the highest ceiling of them all outside of Mahomes. But I think the situation around him just has never been consistent enough, and I haven't seen enough at this point to say, oh, they're going to turn it around, and all of a sudden, everything's going to be all rosy for them. So I look at the Raiders and I'm like, this team could win a handful of games because they're better at quarterback, but but because of their quarterback, I think they're limited in the big picture. But this week, I think they pull this off against the Broncos team that, look, if you're a Broncos fan, I'm sorry, there's not going to be any rebound season from Russell Wilson. It's going to be a lot of the same, and you're going to have to live with it and then figure out how to pick up the pieces and move forward after this year. So, and it starts poorly this year. I think, talk to me at what time's this game? 4:25? Well, talk to me about 5:25, and we'll talk about how many interceptions Russell Wilson has at this point. And it's going to be more than one. So give me the give me the Broncos to lose, the Raiders to win.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going Broncos. I don't really have any confidence in it. I think maybe the coaching is kind of the biggest difference that I could probably come up with here. I think it's a weird situation going on with Chandler Jones. Hopefully everything's okay there. We'll see if he's back next week. But yeah, I think just kind of looking at the situations that the Raiders have kind of been put in with McDaniels, I just kind of had to lean Sean Payton, finding a way to find this W in week one. And I think the game being in Denver will kind of help them with that. So I'll go Broncos, but not really a lot of confidence in that one.
Next, Chargers hosting the Dolphins, and obviously two AFC potential contenders, big time contenders. Could be. I got the Chargers winning at home, kind of like maybe if it was at Miami, I would take Miami. This could be a higher scoring game because both offenses do have potential to be very explosive. I just like the Chargers at home in this one. I don't know if it's going to tell us too much about either of these teams, though, moving forward. But give me the Chargers.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you're going to find out much about these teams. I'm really intrigued to see what Vic Fangio is able to kind of make this Dolphins defense into this year, and if they can kind of live up to some of that hype that they're getting there. But I think the biggest reason I have to go Chargers is the Teron Armstead injury. Losing him for Week 1 is a tough pill to swallow, and you already have one running back out that the Dolphins have leaned on a lot with Jeff Wilson. So just don't know if the Dolphins maybe have enough pieces to keep up in a potential shootout. So I'll go with LA.
All right, next we have the Patriots hosting the Eagles, rematch of both Super Bowl 39 and Super Bowl 52. However, Tom Brady he is there, just not under center. He will be there as a honoree during halftime, and certainly I'm sure there will be some other sort of ceremony done with him and everything like that. But look, I'm gonna use the Brady mojo to support my pick of the Patriots. beating the Eagles for no reason other than I think just the combination of I do think the Patriots are going to surprise some people offensively, certainly, but I do think the energy that's going to be in the building. I could see a upset over the Eagles in Week 1, and why not? With Tom Brady in the audience, so to speak. But the reality of it is, I'm confident. I'm not saying Mac Jones is going to take the next step. I'm confident that he can take the next step. I'm interested to see what Ezekiel Elliott looks like. Certainly not the player that came onto the scene when he was a rookie, but still a guy that can score a lot of touchdowns. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, adds a different element to this Patriots offense that they were lacking a year ago. So, and then on the other side too, I mean, Jalen Hurts. I want to see him repeat what he did last year, and I think he has a good game against this Patriots defense. I just think somehow, some way, that the presence of Tom Brady is going to will the Patriots to win. So give me the Patriots in this one.
This was one I did want to go New England, but ultimately I went with Philadelphia. I think this is going to be a Patriots offense that's much improved this year. I just don't know if this is the type of offense maybe they're going to keep up with in the first game of the season. Still maybe going through a growing process there. So kind of just the offenses is what I kind of looked at it as the biggest difference. So I like Philadelphia, but I do think it'll be a tight one.
Next, we have Seahawks hosting the Rams. Cooper Kupp, injured reserve. He's going to be out for at least 4 weeks, maybe more. Like I said, we've talked about before. I think that the Rams are heading towards a 4-win season. So I like Seattle in this one. I think you're going to get more second half Seattle this year than you did first half. But in this case, I still like them pretty comfortably against the Rams. So give me the Seahawks.
If anything, the Rams did play Seattle tough twice last year, and that was with John Wolford and Baker Mayfield as quarterback in each of those games. So I do think this might be a little closer than some expect, but ultimately I think Seattle just has a lot more pieces, and they've been able to kind of coach their way around Sean McVay's teams before. So I think they're going to do it again, and I like Seattle in this one.
Next, Giants hosting the Cowboys Sunday Night Football. I got the Giants in this one. I think it's going to be a close matchup. I think the divisional rivalry is always going to be an intriguing matchup between these two. I like Daniel Jones as a quarterback. I think they're going to do some nice things on offense. My gut tells me the Giants are going to win this one, and then the Cowboys are probably going to win at home later in the season. So give me the Giants.
Yeah, if anything, this has been a tough matchup for a while now for the Giants. I think Dallas has won 4 in a row and 11 of the last 12. But this feels like a kind of a classic Cowboys thing where they're kind of receiving a little bit more hype. Some people picking them to win the NFC, so it just feels kind of classic Cowboys that they fall
Receiving
flat
too
on their
much hype.
face out of the gate.
Established 1996.
Right.
And running. So.
Yeah, I just think the Giants' toughness. I love Brian Dable and how he's kind of built this team. So I think they'll come out on top, and Dallas will kind of with receiving that hype, kind of fall flat out of the gate.
All right, last but not least, Monday Night Football, the debut of Aaron Rodgers with the New York Jets hosting the Buffalo Bills. I got the Bills winning this one. I think this is I know all the excitement, all the talk is going to be about the Jets, but there's just something about no one talking about the Bills as opposed to what we got last year, which was, okay, you can stop talking about the Bills because they haven't actually done anything. I think that's going to allow them to hopefully focus a little bit more and have a little bit better season. Obviously, they want to get over that hump and not be the team that just almost got there. I think the excitement around the Jets team, I think, is warranted, but I think it's going to be slow to start the season, which I think ultimately is going to hurt them in the long run. But I like Buffalo on Monday Night Football.
Maybe this is just me more rooting for it to happen, but I did go with the Jets. I think if anything, I think if Aaron Rodgers and that offense is kind of rolling or at least in sync out of the gate, I do think Buffalo has a little bit more holes, in certain spots that we haven't really seen the last couple of years. Defensive line, I think, is a question mark. Obviously, lost Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker, so I think those holes are going to be tested. if Aaron Rodgers is in sync right away, and I think the Jets will find a way to win it.
It'll be interesting to say at least, but yeah, ultimately I just think that the Jets just going to have some early season struggles that might lead to some costly mistakes or just kind of miscommunication or something that eventually they're going to figure out. But like we said at the top of the show, because of this AFC conference, there's very little margin for error. So that's going to do it for us here on our first FPC NFL Sunday of the 2023 season. Stay tuned. In about 25 minutes or so, we got Kyle Senra coming up with our full press fantasy show, and he'll take you right into pretty much kickoff. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to check us later this week, maybe Thursday, and then obviously next Sunday we'll be back for week 2, and we'll be right back into the routine that we've become so accustomed to the last couple of years. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.